March 31st, 2018. It's a balmy Saturday night in Orlando, Florida.
Orlando is just a working class area where you have great people, families that are just trying to do the best they can.
It's the theme park capital of the world, so that draws a lot of people from all over the world.
A lot of immigrants settle in Orlando because it's easy to find stable work at one of the many amusement parks.
But at 11 p.m., one local couple is starting to worry about their eldest daughter, 23-year-old Vanessa Coakley.
She should be back by now.
Vanessa was living with her parents at the time.
She left earlier that evening around 8 p.m. to go hang out with friends, but they hadn't heard from her since.
Hours have gone by and no word from Vanessa. She has not returned home. She has not called her parents and said that she would be staying out for the night.
And the next day, Vanessa had to go to work. It just seemed very out of character.
She was actually excited about a new job that she was starting at Disney. Vanessa is not someone who goes and stays out all night and does a lot of partying. She works hard.
Hi, you reached Vanessa. Sorry I missed your call. You want to leave your name and your number? I'll give you a call back. Bye.
Vanessa, give me a call, a text, or something. Let me know where you are.
After several repeated calls, no answer from Vanessa, her parents said, okay, let's go to bed and maybe we'll figure out things in the morning. Maybe she'll be back in the morning.
But the next morning, their concern only escalates.
Vanessa still isn't home. There's been no contact from her, no trace of Vanessa.
Honey, still no answer from Vanessa. Check your phone.
And this type of behavior is just not normal for Vanessa, especially being that she had to be to work the next morning very early.
Her parents tried calling Vanessa's job to see if she has clocked in.
She never misses work. There's no way she would have done anything to jeopardize her job.
But after speaking to her boss, their worst fears are realized.
She didn't come to work today.
Her parents are now starting to freak out. They're worried because this isn't like her.
Something really isn't right.
Born and raised in the French West Indies on the Caribbean island of St. Martin, Vanessa Coakley and her family immigrated to the United States after she graduated high school.
They moved to America for new opportunities and for the American dream.
After they settled in Orlando, Vanessa immediately got to work helping to provide for her family.
Her first job here was as a cashier at a local supermarket.
Still, Vanessa had bigger dreams for her future.
She knew she wanted to go into the medical field, and she knew she needed an education to do that.
She enrolled in a technical college. There, she started studying to become a medical assistant.
Vanessa was so excited that she would actually come home and take the blood pressure of her siblings in order to practice so that she would be on her game the next time she went back to class.
Obviously, Vanessa was super busy between work and school, but she still made time to spend time with her family, with her friends, and she enjoyed going out with guys, going on dates.
She definitely enjoyed cruising the dating apps, as many single young people in their 20s do.
But when Vanessa went out on a date with 32-year-old Christian Penchie, she realized she may finally be able to delete those dating apps.
I had such an amazing time with you tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it was great finally being able to spend some time together, in person.
Christian was 32 years old, almost 10 years Vanessa's senior. He was more mature than the guys her age.
He was a divorced dad. He had 3 kids. And Vanessa really respected the way that he had stayed in his kids' lives.
Family was something they both really prioritized.
Christian was also a fellow immigrant.
He immigrated to Orlando from Puerto Rico when he was only 11 years old.
I would love to know more about your journey if you want to hang out again.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely hang out again.
They came from similar immigration stories. They both had the American dream of coming to the U.S. to build a future for their families and make sure that their families were taken care of.
They both worked very, very hard to, get to where they were and to be successful in this country. So both of them very much related on that.
They also related on their love for God.
Actually, would you be interested in maybe going to church with me tomorrow?
Of course, I'd love to.
Christian was very involved at his church. He served a number of roles. He was a custodian, he was an usher, he was a mechanic at the church, as well as the graphic designer that designed the weekly program.
I'll see you in the morning then.
See you then.
After meeting Christian, Vanessa truly believed her search for love was over.
Vanessa thought Christian was the one. She thought this guy was someone that she could spend the rest of her life with.
But after dating him for 2 years, she realized it wasn't meant to be.
She suspected he was cheating on her, and she wasn't going to put up with that.
It was a heartbreaking loss, but Vanessa wasn't one to sulk in the pain.
Vanessa decided to not allow the breakup to keep her down. She knew her worth, she knew her value, and she decided to move on.
She dusted off her dating wings and she got back out there.
But not without keeping work and school as her priority.
By the spring of 2018, she was just 7 months away from graduation. Vanessa had made a 4.0 and got on the president's list of her college.
And as graduation neared, Vanessa secured an exciting new job to help pay for her tuition expenses.
She accepted a position at a coffee shop at Disney World and was beginning to train for her new position.
But now, Vanessa has seemingly vanished without a trace.
She didn't come to work today.
Her parents are freaking out because they don't know where she is.
Something really isn't right.
After 48 hours pass with no sign of Vanessa, her parents' concern reaches an all-time high.
This is clear that something is wrong. Not just something is wrong, something catastrophic has happened.
In the spring of 2018, 23-year-old college student Vanessa Coakley was just 7 months away from graduation.
She was working towards her medical assistant certification.
She was a student that was doing awesome in the classroom.
On top of juggling work and school, Vanessa had just jumped back into the dating scene following the end of a 2-year relationship.
She was getting back out there, throwing herself into the dating pool. She was starting to make new connections.
But now, Vanessa has vanished, and her family can't contain their fears any longer.
Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on April 2nd, that's when Vanessa's family heads to the sheriff's office to file a missing persons police report.
Family members tell investigators that they haven't talked to their daughter. They haven't seen her since Saturday at 8 p.m. when she left home.
Did she say where she was going or who she was going to be with?
No. And you tried calling her?
Yes, multiple times. She's not responding to our text either.
They told the sheriff's office that this type of behavior is completely not like their 23-year-old daughter. She lives on her cell phone. She always has it handy.
She has never gone this long without checking in with her parents. This is totally odd behavior for Vanessa.
We even tried calling her new job, and they haven't heard from her either.
She would never be a no-call or no-show.
Vanessa's parents knew how responsible Vanessa was. It was not like her to skip out on work or responsibilities.
Vanessa's parents say they've been so desperate to track down their daughter that they've done some detective work of their own.
Since Vanessa's phone is on the plan with her parents were able to reach out to the phone company to obtain the last number that she had been texting with.
The number belonged to a man named Domingo Sandoval.
But she's never mentioned his name before.
He might be a friend from work or school.
Vanessa's parents don't recognize that name, and they have no idea of the relationship that he may have had with Vanessa.
Do you think you can find him? Maybe he knows where Vanessa is.
We will work on tracking him down immediately.
Detectives locate an address for Domingo in southwest Orlando and head to the home.
Domingo Sandoval?
Yes?
We have some questions for you concerning Miss Vanessa Coakley. Can we come in?
But as soon as they mention Vanessa by name, Domingo freezes up. He gets cagey.
And then a young woman comes to the door.
What's going on?
It's nothing, babe. I'll handle it.
Okay.
He agrees to speak to the police, but he wanted to talk to the police outside because he did not want his girlfriend to hear the conversation.
Detectives can't help but find this suspicious.
I don't know what you want from me.
Look, all we want is some information.
After the investigators tell Domingo that Vanessa has been reported missing, he starts to get really nervous.
Look, I barely know the girl.
When investigators ask Domingo about his relationship with Vanessa, he tells them that he met her online through a dating app a couple of weeks ago.
Domingo claims they only communicated through online messaging and through text. They never met in person.
He was attempting to hide his relationship with Vanessa from his girlfriend. She didn't even know that Vanessa existed or that Domingo had a dating profile.
Now, we know you talked to her on Saturday, and you were the last person she was in contact with.
She sent me a text message saying she was going out, but I never heard from her again.
Did she say where she was going?
No.
He admits he may have been the last person to talk to her Saturday night. However, he's adamant that he had nothing to do with her disappearance.
Look, there's another person you may want to talk to, though.
While he and detectives were talking, he mentioned that Vanessa had complained a lot about her ex-boyfriend, Christian Pinchy.
Domingo claimed that Vanessa told him when she and Christian were dating, their relationship was tumultuous. They were arguing all the time, they fought all the time, and they broke up last year.
The way she would talk about him, I don't know. It didn't sound like things were completely over to me.
According to Domingo, Vanessa had recently told him that Christian had suddenly reached back out to her.
And he was trying to win her back.
Orlando investigators searching for 23-year-old Vanessa Coakley have determined that the last person she spoke to before her disappearance was a man named Domingo Sandoval.
Domingo was a local man who she met through one of her online dating apps.
As investigators question Domingo about Vanessa's disappearance, he maintains that he knows nothing.
However, Domingo says there's another man police should look into. Vanessa's ex, Christian Pinchy.
It didn't sound like things were completely over to me.
He says that Vanessa told him Christian had recently reached back out to her, trying to get back together.
Maybe she decided to get back with Christian, and that's who she went out with Saturday night.
Look, I swear I had nothing to do with her disappearance.
Domingo allows investigators to go through his phone. And as they're going through the text messages and calls, it seems like Domingo's story is adding up.
The messages between Domingo and Vanessa seem innocent enough, and there's no reason for them to believe that anything he said wasn't true.
The last two messages that Vanessa sent to Domingo were sent around 9 p.m. the day she disappeared.
Vanessa sent a selfie and a text message that followed that said, "If I don't respond, I'm out."
The text messages also appear to confirm Domingo's concerns about Christian Pinchy.
Vanessa had been complaining to him about her ex-boyfriend, Christian.
Vanessa's text wrote, "He wants to get back with me, but I can't because I don't see him like that anymore."
From everything they've seen so far, it appears that Domingo has been telling the truth.
However, when they ask him to come back down to the station so they can download his phone records and he can give a formal statement, he does something that surprises them.
All right.
Look, man, I have answered all of your questions. Do I need to get a lawyer involved or something?
He's starting to feel like he's a suspect.
He tells investigators that he's been cooperative enough and that he refuses to go back to the station.
While Domingo's behavior is suspicious, it's not enough to bring him back to the station by force.
They still don't have a body or any physical evidence, so Vanessa's still just missing.
And detectives are still hoping to locate her before it's too late.
After learning about Vanessa's ex, Christian Pinchy, and that he was trying to get back together with her, detectives want to speak with Christian firsthand.
Could Christian have something to do with Vanessa's disappearance?
But they quickly hit a dead end.
He's not an easy guy to get a hold of.
They do find a phone number, but when they called, no one answered.
So detectives ask Vanessa's family to come back to the station to speak with them.
Detectives were hoping that her family would have more information on Christian.
So we didn't find Vanessa with Domingo, but he did let us know about a recent ex of hers, Christian Pinchy. Do you know him?
Yeah, we met Christian. They broke up about a year ago.
Over the course of the relationship, Vanessa's family says they got to know Christian fairly well.
Vanessa and Christian's relationship went on for 2 years. Even though they argued and they fought, they continued to stay together for a while.
The couple officially broke up in 2017.
As for the reason for their breakup, loved ones say it was the result of infidelity in the relationship.
Christian, have you seen my phone?
No, baby, I haven't.
Christian! What are these?
Those aren't yours?
No!
Vanessa started to suspect Christian was cheating on her, and she wasn't the type of person to put up with something like that.
Who is she?
Babe, what do you mean?
She was a no-nonsense person. She was not going to tolerate cheating. So she decided to leave the relationship.
You really think I'm stupid, don't you? No. I'm done.
Wait, Vanessa! Wait!
Do you think that maybe she was going to meet with Christian on the night that she disappeared?
It's certainly possible.
After speaking with Vanessa's family, detectives are determined to speak with Christian as soon as possible.
Do you know where this guy lives? The address on his license and registration is no longer valid.
He was living in an apartment complex in South Orlando.
They learned that Christian had been staying at a motel that had turned into a condominium complex.
She's able to provide detectives with the name of the apartment complex, but she doesn't know the specific apartment number.
Detectives head to the location in search of Christian, hoping Vanessa is there with him.
It's possible that she was ashamed of getting back with her ex and didn't want anybody to know about it.
Maybe they were both laying low until they figured out their relationship.
When detectives arrive, they make contact with the apartment manager.
We're looking for someone named Christian Pinchy. Does he live here?
It's not ringing a bell, but let me check my records.
Unfortunately, the apartment manager isn't able to give detectives the information they're hoping for.
The manager didn't find any record of Christian Pinchy living there.
We do have some tenants who are currently subletting their apartments. My coworker Mike has that information. He'll be in later this afternoon.
Okay, great. When he gets in, can you have him give me a call?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks.
At this point, detectives are running thin on leads and short on hope of finding any trace of Vanessa, until her family makes another crucial discovery.
Hi, Mr. Coakley.
Around 6:30 p.m. on April 4th, investigators get a call from Vanessa's father.
He says they had just found Vanessa's car abandoned in an Orlando parking lot.
Okay, we'll be right there.
When investigators arrived to the parking lot where Vanessa's car was found, they realized that it's right around the corner from her college.
In the front seat, they are able to find Vanessa's book bag containing her school ID as well as her school books.
Fortunately, there doesn't appear to be any blood evidence or any sign of struggle in the vehicle's interior.
But after investigators finish searching the interior, there's one more place to look.
So far, they hadn't discovered anything that really stood out, but now it's time to check the trunk.
Investigators are scared of what they might find.
Let's see what's inside.
Two days after Vanessa Coakley's parents reported her missing, police in Orlando, Florida have made little headway in tracking her down.
They were really coming up empty. They had zero leads on Vanessa's whereabouts.
But now, investigators have received a new tip from Vanessa's family. They've managed to locate her missing vehicle.
So far, they hadn't discovered anything that really stood out, but now it's time to check the trunk.
No. Let's see what's inside.
They were afraid of what they might find in the trunk.
When they pop it open, they don't find any signs of Vanessa inside.
However, they do find other evidence in the back of the vehicle. Vanessa's purse was found in the trunk, containing her credit card and her debit card, as well as her passport and other ID cards.
Although Vanessa is still nowhere to be found, locating her belongings places an ominous cloud on the investigation.
This is more evidence that this is likely a matter of foul play. Because why else would she abandon her ID card, her purse, and her money?
They know there has to be something bigger going on here. And the longer they go without finding her, the worse that feeling gets.
Just then, Vanessa's father returns to the scene. He says he may have uncovered another important clue.
Yeah. Our youngest daughter just called. She found something. Information from Vanessa's phone.
Vanessa's sister was able to log into the family's shared Google account and able to pinpoint Vanessa's last known location.
The phone stopped transmitting on exactly 11:59 p.m. on the night of March 31st, just a few hours after Vanessa left her parents' home.
But what's more important is where her phone was last seen. The condominium complex where police believe Vanessa's ex-boyfriend Christian was last living.
This once again points them in Christian's direction. It's an amazing lead.
Thanks.
The family truly was an invaluable resource in this case.
Armed with this new lead, investigators head back over to the apartment complex.
It's about a half a mile away from the location of her car.
Hey, detectives. Mike just got here. Mike!
Hey, detectives. How are you? I just took a look at our sublet records, and I'm not seeing the name Christian Pinchy anywhere. Is there a possibility that he goes by a different name?
Not that we know of, but do you mind if we look around and speak to some of your other tenants?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Detectives are determined Christian lives somewhere in the complex and has been subletting his unit under the table.
They started knocking on doors and talking to neighbors and showing them Christian's picture.
Yes.
All right, sorry to bother you. Can we ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
We're looking for this man. His name is Christian Pinchy. Have you seen him around here?
Yes, he lives right there.
One neighbor immediately recognized Christian's picture. She says he lives next door to her.
She hadn't seen him for a few days.
The last time she saw Christian was on the morning of April 1st when he was loading a small TV into the back of his car.
Good morning, Christian.
Oh, hey, good morning.
You need help with that?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Okay. But I haven't seen him around here since.
What about this woman?
No, never seen her before.
She has not seen anybody coming or going from his apartment since that day.
Despite what Christian's neighbor says, they check to see if Christian is home.
When police knock on Christian's door, there's no answer. So police set up surveillance and wait for him to return.
However, as the hours go by, it seems less and less likely that Christian is coming back anytime soon.
As day turns to night, impatience begins setting in for detectives.
Investigators were fearing that Vanessa could be in imminent danger. They needed to get in quickly.
So the next day, they obtain a search warrant to enter the unit without Christian.
Immediately upon entering the apartment, it's clear that something is wrong.
They're hit with the smell of decomposition.
For 3 days, Florida police have been investigating the mysterious disappearance of young college student and Caribbean native Vanessa Coakley. Now, new evidence has led them to the apartment of her ex-boyfriend, Christian Penchie.
Immediately upon entering the apartment, it's clear that something is wrong.
They're hit with the smell of decomposition.
The smell leads them back to the bathroom.
And in the bathroom, they discover what they've been dreading all along.
Vanessa is buried face down in the bathroom under a bunch of blankets.
It's clear Vanessa's death was the result of foul play.
Gunshot wound.
Vanessa's death was no accident. They were able to see that she had been shot in the head and left to die.
Based on the level of decomposition, investigators believe that Vanessa was killed on the same night she left home, which means she's been dead in Christian's apartment for almost a week.
You can tell CS had to come in. We found her.
As tragic of a discovery as this is, detectives now feel confident that Christian Penchie is Vanessa's killer. They just need to find him.
Investigators searched Christian's apartment from top to bottom, but there is no evidence that could point to where Christian may have gone.
But since he took the TV with him, detectives have one idea on a possible way to track him down.
Maybe he pawned the TV to make some quick cash before going on the run.
When investigators check local pawn shops for their recent transactions, their hunch pays off.
Just a few hours before Vanessa was reported missing by her family, investigators are able to determine that Christian made some sort of transaction at a pawn shop. And it wasn't a TV that Christian had pawned. In fact, it was a .38 caliber handgun.
Detectives don't think this is just a coincidence.
Investigators are confident that this gun is the one that was used to kill Vanessa, so they immediately seize it and take it in as evidence.
But investigators haven't gotten any closer to tracking down Christian Penchie.
They have officers scouring the city for him as detectives continue to search for leads.
And it turns out police aren't the only ones looking for Christian.
Police get an unexpected call from Christian's brother, Marco, who lives out of town.
He's trying to file a missing persons report for Christian since he hasn't spoken to him since April 1st.
The officer I spoke to said he could help me with locating my brother.
Marco goes on to say he's worried about his brother because he's been going through a lot lately. He was recently fired from his job.
Marco also knows that Christian bought a gun a few weeks earlier. And based on his recent depression, he's afraid that his brother could have done something to hurt himself.
Marco says he has been looking everywhere for Christian and is convinced something terrible has happened.
We're looking for him too.
Why?
He's wanted in connection to a local homicide.
You mean, you think he killed someone?
Marco has no idea that his brother is suspected of committing murder.
He says this is completely out of character for Christian.
Are you sure?
Yes. His ex-girlfriend's body was located in his apartment. Well, we'll keep searching for him. But if you find out anything, you'll let us know, all right?
Yes.
But before police can search any further, they receive copies of Christian's most recent transactions from his bank.
Once investigators get their hands on Christian's bank records, they get a crucial key to finding him.
They find a transaction on April 2nd that stands out to them.
He bought a plane ticket to Puerto Rico.
After days of searching for missing woman Vanessa Coakley, Florida police discovered her body inside the Orlando apartment of her ex-boyfriend, Christian Penchie.
No one knew where she was for over 5 days, and when they finally found her, she was gone. Vanessa had tragically been shot in the head.
When the family is informed, they are crushed. They have basically been working just as hard as the detectives to find her.
She was a beautiful soul. She did not deserve this.
Now, after reviewing Christian's bank records, detectives believe they've discovered where he's hiding.
There's a particular transaction on April 2nd that stands out to investigators.
2 days after Vanessa disappeared, he booked a flight back home to his native country of Puerto Rico.
Investigators immediately reach out to the airline to confirm that Christian actually boarded the flight that day.
He was definitely on that flight. Now it looks like investigators will need to call in assistance from Puerto Rico.
Florida police reached out to authorities in Puerto Rico and basically explained the entire case to them. They immediately launch a manhunt in order to track down Christian and get him behind bars.
But to everyone's surprise, Christian beats them to it.
On April 6th, 1 week after Vanessa disappeared from her parents' home, Christian turns himself into law enforcement in Puerto Rico.
He knew the jig was up.
Christian is quickly extradited back to Orlando. And once investigators get him into the interrogation room, it didn't take long for Christian to confess to everything.
I just missed her, you know? And I thought that we could work things out.
Christian explained the weeks leading up to Vanessa's death, he had tried everything he could to rekindle their relationship. He realized he made a mistake and he wanted her back.
She was right. I cheated. But I knew that I could make things right.
Christian insisted things would be different this time.
However, Vanessa wasn't having it.
Despite Christian's efforts, Vanessa was reluctant to get back with him. Wasn't sure if she could ever trust him again.
She was also interested in where things might go with Domingo, who she didn't realize was a cheater too.
I didn't want to give up this time. So I invited her over to my apartment just to talk.
And when he invited her to his home on the night of March 31st, she reluctantly agreed to join him.
Hey, thanks for coming, Vanessa. Really means a lot.
You're welcome.
They talked for a while, and at the beginning, things seemed to be going well between them. But before long, an argument broke out.
What did you want to talk about?
Come on, Vanessa, it's straightforward. I've been asking you just for another chance to make things right.
You're not listening. Christian, I'm done.
Vanessa was still harboring some resentment around what had caused the breakup.
She wasn't interested in giving him a second chance at a relationship with her. She was standing firm.
I've told you I'm different.
I do not believe you, Christian. I don't.
But
I need a minute.
No, wait.
No.
Christian said that the argument escalated, and Vanessa went into the bathroom to be alone. And that's when he felt an overwhelming sense of rage come over him.
And I just couldn't calm myself down. I was so angry that she wasn't getting it.
When there is intense anxiety or anger and you're flooded with these emotions, it can shut down that judgment and planning part of your brain. So you are strictly in fight or flight. And during that time, it's very difficult to make rational choices, not make impulsive choices.
He grabbed his gun and forced his way into the bathroom.
What are you doing?
There, he raised his .38 caliber handgun and shot her once in the head, killing her instantly.
But once Christian came down from the high, he instantly realized what he'd just done.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
He says that he started to panic. He didn't know what to do.
Christian says he covered Vanessa's body with blankets. Then he tried to cover up his trail.
He knew he needed to get her car out of his parking lot, so he drove it to another parking lot down the road and walked back home.
He then disposed of her keys and her phone.
I knew that I needed to get out of town, but I needed to make sure that my kids were okay.
He said he dropped off his TV at his ex-wife's house just so he could see his kids one last time, but didn't tell them anything about what happened.
Christian's next move was to get rid of the murder weapon.
He pawned the gun at the pawn shop and purchased a ticket to Puerto Rico to go home.
He thought he could hide out there, but despite all he had done to cover his tracks, he realized the police were hot on his trail.
The guilt, it was just eating me.
He decided to turn himself in and face the music.
In a situation like this, where it was somebody who he claimed to really have cared about, it is likely that these events were weighing heavy on his heart, and sometimes people confess because they just don't want to carry the guilt anymore.
It's a harrowing tale, and for investigators, it's the confession they were hoping for.
Everything that Christian's telling them is lining up with the evidence, and they believe he's telling the truth.
He said he wasn't himself, but in the eyes of the law, that does nothing to lessen the responsibility that he now has to pay for the crime that he committed.
Christian Penchie is charged with first-degree murder and booked into Orange County Jail.
Everyone who knew him was absolutely stunned. He had no history of violence or a criminal background.
Having already confessed to Vanessa's murder, Christian doesn't stand much of a chance at trial. So he eventually agrees to plead guilty to second-degree murder and throw himself at the mercy of the court.
At the sentencing hearing on April 12, 2019, Vanessa's family read their victim impact statements, and to say they were powerful is an understatement. They were tearful and emotional.
This was a girl who was deeply admired by her friends, by her family, and you could tell that it really left a negative impact, it left a void in the family.
Christian also offers a statement of his own.
Christian's statement was, "I am sorry. I am deeply sorry. It wasn't me. It was something out of the ordinary."
He claimed he was under the influence of some kind of drugs, but he never specified what kind of drugs he had taken.
Will the court show him leniency?
When the judge handed down the sentence to Christian, he threw the book at him. He didn't show him any mercy.
The judge sentences Christian to life in prison, and Christian must serve 25 years of his sentence before he's eligible for parole.
While the conviction brings, I'm sure, a little bit of closure for Vanessa's family, there's nothing that will bring their daughter back.
She was doing everything right. She just fell in love with the wrong person who, for the majority of their relationship, didn't even hint at any signs of violence. So she had no way of knowing that he was going to go from 0 to 100.
He was not ready to just let her go. And when she was able to stand in her truth and be honest about where she was emotionally, he could not take that rejection.
This case is truly a tragedy. You have a young woman who was a hard worker. People describe her as an amazing person, an awesome friend. She was destined to do some awesome things, but now that won't ever happen.
The first thing they found was silence. Not the peaceful kind that settles over pine forests at sunrise, nor the comforting quiet of a campsite before the world wakes up. This silence seemed heavier, as though the mountains themselves had stopped breathing. The wind drifted across the sagebrush fields of Wyoming, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant evergreens, but it could not erase the feeling that something terrible had happened here. The landscape stretched endlessly beneath an impossibly blue September sky, beautiful enough to belong on a postcard, yet forever destined to become the backdrop of one of America's most haunting true crime stories. Long before investigators stepped across the uneven ground near Spread Creek, millions of people had already met the young woman who would eventually be found there. They had watched her laugh through short travel videos. They had admired photographs of sunsets reflected in alpine lakes. They had envied a life that appeared spontaneous, romantic, and fearless. To strangers scrolling through glowing phone screens late at night, she represented freedom itself. A white van. Endless highways. National parks. Dreams without deadlines. She smiled often. She smiled beside cliffs. She smiled beneath waterfalls. She smiled while holding her fiancé's hand. The internet believed every smile. That illusion would become one of the most disturbing parts of this story. Because while thousands of followers admired carefully edited snapshots of a perfect relationship, another story was unfolding just outside the camera's frame. It existed in moments the audience never saw. The arguments that ended with tears. The long stretches of silence inside a cramped van. The growing tension hidden behind captions celebrating another beautiful day on the road. The emotional exhaustion disguised by carefully chosen filters. Sometimes the most dangerous places are the ones decorated to look like paradise. As investigators would later reconstruct the final weeks of Gabby Petito's life, every photograph, every text message, every gas station receipt, every surveillance video became another fragment of a puzzle that no one realized they had been watching in real time. The tragedy did not begin in Wyoming. It did not begin when search teams entered Grand Teton National Park. It did not begin when news helicopters circled above forests or when social media transformed into one enormous missing person bulletin. It began much earlier. It began in tiny moments so ordinary that almost everyone overlooked them. A nervous laugh after an uncomfortable comment. An apology that should never have been necessary. A habit of blaming herself whenever something went wrong. A relationship slowly shrinking one person's confidence until she questioned her own reality. Looking backward, these moments seem painfully obvious. Looking forward, they looked like everyday life. That is one of the cruelest truths about stories like this. They rarely announce themselves with dramatic warnings. They grow quietly, almost invisibly, until the damage can no longer be hidden. The roads stretching across the American West have always carried a certain mythology. Endless highways promise reinvention. Mountains promise peace. Open skies promise possibility. Travelers chase sunsets believing every mile places them closer to the life they have imagined. For Gabby Petito, those roads represented exactly that. She was 22 years old, creative, optimistic, deeply sentimental, and fascinated by the idea that happiness could be found through adventure rather than possessions. Like many young people of her generation, she dreamed of documenting her journey online, turning memories into videos and photographs that might inspire others to embrace a simpler life. Together with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, she transformed a white Ford Transit van into a tiny home on wheels. It was modest, cramped, and imperfect, yet through careful editing it became something magical. Every sunrise appeared effortless. Every campsite seemed peaceful. Every destination looked like another chapter of a fairy tale. Followers saw freedom. Followers saw romance. Followers saw two young people choosing love over routine. What they never saw was how difficult it is to escape conflict when your entire world measures only a few square meters. Inside that van there was no separate bedroom. No quiet place to retreat. No front door to slam. No distance after an argument. Every disagreement remained trapped within those thin metal walls, traveling with them from one state to another. Colorado. Utah. Wyoming. Montana. The scenery changed. The emotional pressure did not. Weeks before the nation learned Gabby's name, strangers unknowingly crossed paths with the couple in restaurants, campsites, grocery stores, hiking trails, and gas stations. They exchanged polite smiles. Some remembered friendly conversations. Others noticed nothing unusual at all. Human memory is strange. After tragedy, People search desperately for clues hidden inside ordinary moments. Did she seem frightened? Did he seem angry? Did anyone notice something was wrong? Most could not answer. Life rarely pauses long enough for strangers to recognize a crisis unfolding beside them. Yet somewhere along the journey, cracks had already begun spreading beneath the polished surface of their relationship. Friends would later describe Brian as increasingly controlling. Small disagreements reportedly escalated into emotional confrontations. Gabby often appeared anxious, eager to restore peace even when she believed she had done nothing wrong. There is a pattern experts often recognize in emotionally abusive relationships. Control does not always arrive through shouting. Sometimes it arrives through criticism disguised as concern. Sometimes it arrives through isolation. Sometimes it arrives by convincing another person that every conflict is somehow their fault. Over time, confidence begins disappearing one apology at a time. Gabby continued smiling for photographs. She continued posting online. She continued believing the trip could still become everything they had planned. Perhaps she hoped tomorrow would feel different. Perhaps she believed another breathtaking landscape might somehow erase yesterday's argument. Hope can be remarkably persistent, even when evidence quietly argues otherwise. Then came August 12, 2021. A witness called emergency services after seeing a man striking a woman outside the Moonflower Community Cooperative in Moab, Utah. The report was alarming. Police located the van. Body cameras began recording. Those recordings would later become some of the most analyzed footage in modern true crime history. Viewers around the world would eventually watch a young woman standing beside a police vehicle, crying uncontrollably, struggling to catch her breath, apologizing repeatedly. Again and again she blamed herself. Again and again she insisted she was responsible. Her hands trembled. Her voice cracked. She appeared emotionally overwhelmed. Standing nearby, Brian appeared comparatively calm. The officers spoke with both of them separately. They assessed the situation. They tried to determine whether a crime had occurred. In the end, no one was arrested. The couple spent the night apart before continuing their journey. For the officers involved, it was another difficult domestic disturbance call among many they would answer throughout their careers. For the nation watching weeks later, it became something entirely different. People searched every expression, every pause, every sentence, every glance. Could this tragedy have been prevented? The question echoed across television studios, podcasts, courtrooms of public opinion, and dinner tables throughout America. There would never be an answer capable of satisfying everyone. After leaving Moab, the photographs continued. Mountain lakes reflected crystal clear skies. Sunlight painted golden colors across distant peaks. Gabby's social media still resembled the diary of someone living her dream. Yet those closest to her noticed subtle changes invisible to strangers. Messages became shorter. Phone calls became less frequent. Something felt different. Parents often struggle to explain instincts like these. Nothing specific seemed wrong. Everything simply felt off. Then communication nearly stopped altogether. Days passed. An unsettling text message arrived. It did not sound like Gabby. It did not resemble the way she usually communicated with her mother. Tiny details that might seem meaningless to outsiders immediately raised concern among those who knew her best. Meanwhile, Brian returned alone to Florida. He drove the white van home. Gabby was not with him. He offered no explanation to her family. Questions multiplied. Answers never came. Within days, a missing person report transformed into one of the largest investigations in recent American memory. Television networks interrupted regular programming. Social media users organized timelines, analyzed photographs, compared maps, and searched through countless vacation videos hoping to uncover something investigators had missed. For perhaps the first time, millions of ordinary people participated in a criminal investigation from their living rooms. Some contributed valuable information. Others spread speculation. Truth and rumor raced across the internet together. Eventually, a travel couple reviewing footage from their own vacation unknowingly provided investigators with one of the investigation's most significant breakthroughs. Their dashboard camera had quietly recorded Gabby's white van parked near Spread Creek. Just another vehicle. Just another moment. Until it wasn't. Search teams entered the wilderness. Before long, they found what everyone had feared. A vibrant young woman whose greatest dream had been exploring the beauty of America had instead become part of one of its darkest stories. But this story is not simply about a homicide investigation. It is not only about forensic evidence, police reports, digital footprints, or courtroom documents that would never come because the primary suspect died before facing trial. It is about appearances. About the dangerous distance between what the world sees and what someone quietly endures. It is about a relationship presented as an adventure while slowly becoming a prison. And it is about a young woman whose final journey forced millions of people to reconsider how easily pain can hide behind a smile, a photograph, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. This is the story of Gabby Petito. It begins with a dream that captivated the world, but it ends in a silence that continues to ask difficult questions long after the headlines faded. The first miles of the journey felt exactly the way dreams are supposed to feel. Morning sunlight spilled across quiet suburban streets in Blue Point, New York, catching the polished white paint of a Ford Transit van that had become far more than a vehicle. Every cabinet inside had been carefully measured. Every shelf had been built with purpose. There was just enough room for clothes, cooking supplies, camera equipment, journals, hiking boots, and the countless little objects that make an unfamiliar place feel like home. It was small enough to force simplicity, yet large enough to carry two young people toward the future they believed they wanted. To anyone watching from outside, it looked like the beginning of an unforgettable love story. Gabby Petito stood beside the van with the excitement of someone who had spent months imagining this exact moment. She was 22 years old, but there was still something unmistakably youthful about her enthusiasm. She approached the world with curiosity rather than caution. Mountains were invitations. Forest trails promised discovery. Every unfamiliar town hinted at another memory waiting to be made. Travel had become more than a hobby. It had become an identity. Long before the trip officially began, Gabby had immersed herself in the growing culture of van life. She watched videos from creators who traded conventional careers for endless highways. Tiny homes on wheels became symbols of freedom. Social media overflowed with images of people waking beside alpine lakes, brewing coffee under towering pine trees, and ending each day beneath skies crowded with stars. Those images spoke to something deep inside her. She wasn't searching for luxury. She wasn't chasing wealth. She wanted experiences that couldn't fit inside an office building. She believed life became richer through movement. Friends remembered Gabby as someone who naturally brought warmth into conversations. She laughed easily. She photographed ordinary moments because she believed beauty existed almost everywhere if someone cared enough to notice it. Even before the cross-country trip, her camera was rarely out of reach. She imagined documenting every stage of the adventure. Not simply for strangers online. For herself. For the future version of the young woman she hoped to become. The YouTube channel she created wasn't yet famous. The Instagram account attracted followers, but nothing compared to what would happen later. At the time, it simply represented possibility. Every uploaded photograph carried the hope that maybe, just maybe, other people would feel inspired to chase their own dreams. Brian Laundrie shared many of those interests. At least on the surface. He appreciated nature. He preferred hiking trails over crowded cities. He spoke about living simply, consuming less, escaping the pressures of modern society. Together, they seemed remarkably compatible. They could spend hours discussing national parks. They planned routes across multiple states. They debated which trails offered the best views. They researched campsites, fuel stops, and hidden scenic locations that rarely appeared in tourist brochures. To outsiders, they looked like two people building a life around shared passions rather than material possessions. That image mattered. Especially online. Social media rewards beautiful moments far more readily than difficult ones. A photograph captures laughter. It cannot capture the argument that happened 20 minutes earlier. A sunset selfie cannot reveal the silence that follows emotional exhaustion. A smiling face says nothing about the tears that were wiped away before pressing the shutter button. Gabby understood how to tell visual stories. She knew how sunlight transformed ordinary landscapes into breathtaking photographs. She understood framing, composition, and timing. The images she shared weren't fake. The mountains really were magnificent. The lakes really reflected impossible shades of blue. The smiles were often genuine. But photographs only tell the truth about a fraction of a second. Life exists in everything that happens before and after. That distinction would later become painfully important. As July 2021 unfolded, the couple left the East Coast behind and entered the vast American landscape that had occupied so many of Gabby's daydreams. Endless highways cut through rolling plains before rising toward dramatic mountain ranges. Every few hundred miles, the scenery transformed completely. One day they stood among towering red rock formations glowing beneath desert sunlight. Another day they wandered beside rivers cold enough to numb their hands. Clouds drifted across enormous western skies unlike anything they had known growing up in New York. Gabby photographed everything. Wildflowers pushing through rocky soil. Old wooden fences disappearing into distant hills. Sunlight pouring through pine forests. Tiny roadside diners. Weathered gas stations. Even simple cups of coffee looked somehow extraordinary when surrounded by landscapes that seemed untouched by time. The journey offered exactly what she had hoped. Adventure. Discovery. Movement. Freedom. Or at least, the appearance of freedom. Living inside a van sounds romantic until everyday realities begin accumulating. There is little privacy. Every personal item must remain organized. Cooking becomes complicated. Finding showers requires planning. Laundry demands day tours. A rainy afternoon transforms the interior into an even smaller living space. There is nowhere to escape after disagreements. Arguments cannot be postponed. Every emotion echoes within the narrow metal walls. Couples who thrive in ordinary homes sometimes struggle after spending weeks together inside vehicles barely larger than walk-in closets. Stress builds quietly. Fatigue follows. Minor frustrations become larger than they deserve. For Gabby and Brian, the confined lifestyle gradually intensified tensions that may already have existed before the trip ever began. Friends later described noticeable patterns within the relationship. Brian reportedly preferred control. He criticized details that others considered insignificant. Small disagreements could stretch into prolonged emotional conflicts. Gabby often tried to restore peace rather than continue arguing. She apologized frequently. Sometimes for things that didn't appear to require apologies. People experiencing controlling relationships often develop habits without realizing it. They begin anticipating another person's reactions. They choose words carefully. They avoid subjects likely to trigger conflict. Eventually, keeping peace becomes more important than expressing honest feelings. None of these changes happen overnight. They emerge slowly, almost invisibly, like cracks spreading beneath fresh paint. To social media audiences, however, none of this existed. Gabby's Instagram presented carefully curated moments filled with warmth and optimism. A photograph captured her standing beside dramatic canyon walls, smiling beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Another showed crystal-clear lakes stretching toward distant mountain peaks. Videos featured laughter, dancing, cooking outdoors, and sunsets that seemed almost impossibly beautiful. Comments poured in beneath every upload. People admired their courage. They envied the lifestyle. Many wrote that the couple represented relationship goals. The irony would later become heartbreaking. The more perfect their life appeared online, the less anyone questioned whether something darker might exist outside the frame. Even family members hundreds of miles away relied heavily on phone calls and text messages to understand how the trip was progressing. Gabby reassured them. She described beautiful locations. She talked about future destinations. She remained enthusiastic. Nothing sounded alarming enough to justify serious concern. Parents naturally worry when their children travel across the country, but adventure always includes uncertainty. Flat tires happen. Phones lose signal. Plans change. Long drives create stress. Everything still seemed manageable. Yet subtle differences slowly emerged. Some conversations ended more quickly than usual. Occasionally, Gabby sounded emotionally drained. She still insisted everything was fine. Many people do. Especially when they desperately want it to be true. Meanwhile, the western landscape continued offering breathtaking beauty. Colorado welcomed them with towering peaks still streaked with snow despite the warmth of summer valleys below. Utah unfolded like another planet altogether. Red sandstone cliffs rose above winding roads. Natural arches framed endless skies. Ancient rock formations cast enormous shadows across desert floors that had remained largely unchanged for thousands of years. Gabby appeared genuinely captivated by every destination. Nature calmed her. Being outdoors seemed to restore something inside her that busy suburban life often interrupted. She journaled. She photographed wildflowers. She paused to admire sunsets that lasted far longer than those back home. There were moments when the dream truly felt real. Those moments make this story even more painful. Because happiness and suffering often existed side by side. A beautiful morning hike could end with a difficult argument. A perfect afternoon photograph might follow hours of emotional tension. The audience never witnessed those transitions. Only the final edited memory. Brian, meanwhile, often appeared quieter. Reserved. He rarely projected the same outward excitement that Gabby naturally expressed. Some people who met the couple remembered him as polite but distant. Others noticed nothing unusual whatsoever. Human interactions are brief. Strangers rarely witness enough to understand another person's relationship. That changed during the second week of August. By then, weeks of travel had begun wearing on both of them. The endless movement, limited personal space, financial pressure, content creation, navigation, and ordinary relationship conflicts had all accumulated. Neither could simply go home for a weekend. Home traveled with them. Whatever problems existed inside the relationship traveled too. Moab, Utah, appeared like another spectacular stop along their adventure. Surrounded by dramatic red cliffs and famous national parks, it attracted outdoor enthusiasts from around the world. Tourists filled hiking trails. Cyclists navigated dusty paths. Restaurants buzzed with travelers sharing stories from the road. It should have been another beautiful chapter. Instead, it became one of the most closely examined days in the entire investigation. Before anyone knew Gabby's name. Before television networks devoted hours of coverage to the case. Before millions searched the internet for every available piece of evidence. Someone noticed something deeply troubling. A witness observed what appeared to be a man striking a woman. The behavior looked serious enough to justify calling emergency services. That single phone call would preserve moments investigators, and eventually the entire world, would revisit countless times. Because sometimes history changes without anyone realizing it. A witness makes a call. An officer activates a body camera. A routine traffic stop begins. No one present understands they are recording the final weeks of a young woman's life. No one imagines that ordinary conversation will later be analyzed frame by detectives, psychologists, journalists, attorneys, and millions of strangers searching desperately for answers. The journey that had begun with hope, adventure, and endless possibilities was quietly approaching the point where illusion and reality would collide. Neither Gabby nor Brian could have known that within days, every mile they traveled, every message they sent, every photograph they posted, and every decision they made would become evidence in one of the most closely followed criminal investigations of the decade. And somewhere beyond the towering cliffs of Utah, the road continued stretching toward Wyoming, carrying with it a future that neither of them could escape. Gabby Petito had a way of making ordinary moments feel unforgettable. She didn't need luxury resorts or expensive restaurants to feel happy. A quiet morning beside a river could brighten her entire day. A cup of coffee enjoyed outside the van while the first rays of sunlight touched distant mountains was enough to inspire another photograph, another journal entry, another reminder that life, in her eyes, was built from small moments rather than grand achievements. People who knew her long before the headlines remembered those little details. She was the kind of person who noticed wildflowers growing beside parking lots. She stopped to admire old trees. She collected smooth stones from hiking trails. She often became more excited about discovering an empty scenic overlook than visiting famous tourist attractions. That quiet appreciation for beauty shaped nearly every part of her personality. Growing up in Blue Point, New York, Gabby had always been imaginative. Family members described her as affectionate, expressive, and deeply connected to the people she loved. She enjoyed drawing, photography, decorating spaces, and turning ordinary experiences into memories worth keeping. Unlike people who rushed through life chasing the next achievement, Gabby seemed determined to slow down and truly experience whatever surrounded her. She wasn't fearless. She worried. She overthought situations. She could become anxious when plans changed unexpectedly. But those qualities made her more compassionate, not weaker. She understood what it felt like to feel overwhelmed, and because of that, she naturally tried to comfort others. Friends often remembered her checking on everyone else before talking about herself. She listened carefully. She celebrated other people's successes. She apologized far more often than she needed to. Looking back, that last habit would take on heartbreaking significance. People who spend their lives trying to keep everyone around them happy sometimes become especially vulnerable to relationships built around imbalance rather than mutual respect. Gabby dreamed about creating a life that looked different from the one society traditionally expected. She wasn't chasing corporate promotions. She didn't imagine herself sitting behind the same desk for decades. Instead, she wanted movement. Stories. Experiences. She believed memories carried greater value than possessions. That dream connected naturally with the growing van life movement spreading across social media during the late 2010s and early 2020s. Thousands of young travelers documented lives spent exploring national parks, coastal highways, forests, deserts, and mountain ranges. Their videos promised freedom from routines that many people found exhausting. Gabby watched those creators with genuine admiration. Eventually, she wanted to become one herself. The decision wasn't driven by fame. At least not initially. She simply wanted to document a chapter of her life that felt authentic. The YouTube videos required planning. The Instagram photographs demanded patience. Lighting mattered. Composition mattered. Editing took hours. People often assume content creators spend most of their time traveling. In reality, much of their day disappears behind cameras and laptops. Gabby embraced that work because she genuinely loved storytelling. She believed beautiful places deserved beautiful memories. When she smiled into the camera, the emotion usually wasn't manufactured. She truly felt grateful to witness places she had only imagined visiting as a child. Yet every story has another side. The audience only watched the finished version. They never saw how much emotional energy disappeared before each upload. By 2021, Gabby and Brian had already spent years together. Like many young couples, they had built routines, shared dreams, and spoken about marriage. Friends initially viewed them as compatible. They enjoyed hiking. They preferred nature over cities. They talked about environmental conservation. They appeared united by similar values. But compatibility isn't measured by hobbies alone. It reveals itself during conflict. Healthy relationships allow disagreements without fear. Healthy relationships make room for different opinions. Healthy relationships don't require one person to constantly absorb emotional responsibility for both people. As later investigations revealed through witness interviews, text messages, and recorded encounters, Brian increasingly displayed behaviors that concerned people close to Gabby. Jealousy. Control. Emotional unpredictability. None of these qualities automatically predict violence. But together they can create environments where another person's confidence slowly begins to disappear. Control rarely begins dramatically. It often starts with questions. Who are you texting? Why are you talking to him? Why are you wearing that? Why didn't you tell me sooner? At first, those questions can sound almost flattering. Someone appears deeply invested. Protective. Concerned. Gradually the questions become expectations. Then accusations. Then rules. The person being controlled often adapts without realizing how much freedom has quietly disappeared. Gabby reportedly became increasingly eager to avoid conflict. If Brian appeared frustrated, she tried to calm him. If conversations became tense, she often blamed herself. This pattern would later become painfully visible during police body camera footage recorded in Utah. But even before that day, pieces of the pattern already existed. Friends noticed changes. One described Brian as someone who sometimes seemed uncomfortable whenever Gabby spent time with other people. Another remembered periods when Gabby appeared emotionally drained after disagreements. These weren't explosive public confrontations. Most occurred privately. Inside apartments. Inside vehicles. Away from curious eyes. The most dangerous emotional wounds often leave no visible marks. By the summer of 2021, those private dynamics traveled everywhere with them. The van offered extraordinary freedom. It also removed nearly every opportunity for emotional distance. Imagine living every hour beside another person. Cooking together. Driving together. Sleeping within arm's reach. Planning routes. Managing expenses. Creating online content. Navigating unfamiliar towns. Finding campsites before dark. Searching for showers. Fixing mechanical problems. Even healthy couples would find that exhausting. When emotional imbalance already exists, constant proximity can magnify every underlying issue. Small disagreements become impossible to escape. Silence itself becomes uncomfortable. There is nowhere to walk after an argument. Nowhere to close a bedroom door. Nowhere to breathe separately. Only the next stretch of highway. Gabby continued documenting the trip because storytelling had become part of her identity. The camera remained both companion and refuge. Behind the lens, she could briefly focus on beauty instead of conflict. A sunrise never criticized her. A mountain never argued. A lake never demanded explanations. Nature accepted her exactly as she was. Perhaps that explains why so many of her photographs emphasized landscapes rather than people. The wilderness offered peace that sometimes seemed absent elsewhere. Her journals reflected similar emotions. She described excitement over destinations, creative ideas for future videos, and hopes that the channel would gradually grow. She wanted people watching from home to believe adventure remained possible. She genuinely believed it herself. Hope survived inside her despite growing difficulties. That resilience makes her story especially heartbreaking. Many victims remain because they remember the person they first fell in love with. They believe difficult periods will eventually pass. They hold on to memories from happier days. Leaving isn't simply walking away. It often means abandoning dreams carefully built over years. The dream of marriage. The dream of shared adventures. The dream of growing old together. Walking away can feel like admitting those dreams never truly existed. Psychologists who study coercive relationships frequently describe something called intermittent reinforcement. Moments of tension alternate with moments of affection. Arguments end with apologies. Harsh words are followed by tenderness. Hope returns. The relationship appears repaired. Then the cycle quietly begins again. This pattern creates emotional confusion that outsiders often struggle to understand. People ask why someone stayed. The better question may be why they kept believing things could improve. Because sometimes they do. Briefly. Long enough to restore hope before disappointment returns. As Gabby and Brian traveled farther west, followers continued seeing cheerful updates. Smiling photographs appeared against breathtaking scenery. Short clips celebrated another successful destination. Comments filled with admiration continued arriving. People called them inspirational. Some announced plans to begin van life adventures of their own. None of those followers understood they were witnessing only selected moments from lives becoming increasingly complicated. The distance between appearance and reality grew larger every week. Even Gabby's family remained cautiously optimistic. She called home. She texted. She shared stories about beautiful landscapes. Nothing immediately suggested imminent danger. Parents naturally miss their children during long trips. But missing someone isn't the same as fearing for them. Her mother noticed occasional changes in Gabby's tone. Sometimes she sounded tired. Sometimes conversations ended sooner than expected. Long-distance travel is exhausting. No one immediately assumed something far more serious might be happening. Meanwhile, Brian's behavior reportedly continued fluctuating between ordinary companionship and emotional tension. Witnesses encountered them in restaurants, campgrounds, visitor centers. Most remembered little. One couple laughing near a hiking trail looks much like countless others. Relationships reveal themselves differently behind closed doors than they do in public spaces. There were still good days. Days when they explored together without obvious conflict. Days when photographs captured genuine smiles. Days when laughter echoed across mountain valleys. Those moments were real. So were the arguments. Reality often contains contradictions that photographs cannot capture. By early August, the emotional strain seemed increasingly difficult to ignore. Gabby carried visible anxiety. She wanted the trip to succeed. She wanted the relationship to survive. She wanted the channel to grow. Every dream felt connected to every other dream. If one collapsed, perhaps they all would. That emotional weight became heavier with every passing mile. The highways stretching across Utah seemed endless. Towering sandstone cliffs glowed beneath relentless desert sunlight. Temperatures climbed. Dust covered the van after long drives along unpaved roads. Tourists arrived from around the world seeking adventure among some of America's most spectacular national parks. For Gabby, the scenery remained breathtaking. For the relationship, however, the pressure continued building beneath the surface. Sometimes emotional deterioration happens so gradually that neither person recognizes how much has changed. What once seemed unacceptable slowly becomes normal. Arguments become expected. Apologies become automatic. Walking on eggshells becomes routine. One day blends into the next until someone outside the relationship notices what those inside no longer can. That moment was approaching. A witness would soon observe behavior disturbing enough to place a call to emergency services. Police officers would soon activate body cameras. Millions of people would later replay those recordings searching for answers hidden within trembling hands, tear-filled eyes, interrupted sentences, and uncomfortable silences. The young woman who believed every mountain held another adventure was about to stand on the side of a Utah road, trying to convince strangers that everything was fine while quietly carrying emotions she struggled to explain. The dream was beginning to crack. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just enough for reality to slip through. And once reality finally emerged into the open, there would be no turning back. August the 12th, 2021, began like countless other mornings along the Red Rock highways of southern Utah. The desert air was already warming beneath a cloudless sky. Long shadows stretched across sandstone cliffs before gradually disappearing beneath the rising sun. Tourists filled the roads leading toward Arches National Park, bicycles rolled through the streets of Moab, and hikers packed backpacks with water bottles before disappearing into landscapes that had existed long before the first highways crossed the American West. To everyone else, it was another beautiful summer day. For Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, it would become one of the most significant days of their entire journey. Not because they knew it. Because the world would eventually watch it unfold. Hours before police officers activated their body cameras, an ordinary citizen noticed something deeply disturbing. Outside the Moonflower Community Cooperative in Moab, witnesses observed what appeared to be a man physically assaulting a young woman. According to later recorded emergency calls, the man was seen slapping the woman before both climbed into a white van and drove away. The witness hesitated only long enough to reach for a phone. The emergency dispatcher answered. Within minutes, law enforcement officers began searching for the vehicle. At that moment, nobody knew the names Gabby Petito or Brian Laundrie. To dispatchers, it was another domestic disturbance. To responding officers, it was another call among many. To the witness, it was simply the right thing to do. Sometimes history changes because someone refuses to ignore what they have seen. The white Ford Transit van was eventually located traveling near the entrance to Arches National Park. Police initiated a traffic stop. The van slowed. Dust rose from the roadside as it came to a halt beneath the relentless Utah sun. Body cameras were already recording. Those recordings would later become some of the most analyzed pieces of evidence in modern true crime history. The first images did not resemble the dramatic confrontations many people associate with violent crime. There was no shouting. No physical struggle. No obvious signs of chaos. Instead, there was something quieter. Something that many professionals who work with domestic violence recognized almost immediately. Fear. An officer approached the passenger side. Gabby opened the door. Before she even stepped out, tears were already running down her face. She struggled to speak. Her breathing came in quick, uneven bursts. Her hands shook as she tried to explain what had happened. She apologized repeatedly. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. I'm sorry. I've been so mean. I have OCD. I've just been stressing him out. The words spilled from her almost automatically. Rather than accusing Brian of hurting her, she focused almost entirely on her own perceived failures. She blamed her anxiety. She blamed her emotions. She blamed herself. The officer listened patiently, attempting to calm her. He asked simple questions. Was she okay? Had anyone been drinking? Had either of them hit the other? Gabby continued crying. She wiped tears from her cheeks before they could dry, only for more to replace them moments later. Every few seconds she seemed to apologize for crying itself. People experiencing overwhelming emotional distress often struggle to organize their thoughts. Gabby appeared trapped inside that struggle. She wasn't simply upset. She looked exhausted. Emotionally depleted. As though weeks of accumulated tension had finally become impossible to hide. Meanwhile, another officer spoke separately with Brian. The contrast between the two conversations immediately stood out. Brian appeared composed. Relaxed. He laughed occasionally. He joked with officers. He described their relationship problems calmly, explaining that they had both been under stress while traveling. He acknowledged arguments. He spoke about Gabby's anxiety. He referred to her as emotional. His voice remained steady throughout the interaction. To officers arriving at an unfamiliar situation, both versions had to be considered. Domestic incidents are rarely straightforward. Victims sometimes minimize abuse. Aggressors sometimes present themselves as calm and cooperative. Officers must make difficult decisions using incomplete information gathered within a very short period. The body camera footage captured exactly that challenge. Gabby described feeling overwhelmed by the pressures of maintaining the travel blog while living in the van full-time. She explained that she often became anxious over cleaning and organization. She worried about keeping everything perfect. The small living space made every mess feel larger. Every disagreement lingered because there was nowhere to escape. She admitted scratching Brian during one confrontation. Visible marks on Brian's face and arm appeared to support part of that account. Yet another crucial detail existed. The original emergency caller had reported seeing a man strike a woman. That information did not immediately align with the narrative developing during the roadside interviews. The responding officers were aware of the dispatch report, but reconciling conflicting statements in emotionally charged domestic incidents is extraordinarily difficult. Gabby continued taking responsibility. She repeatedly insisted she did not want Brian arrested. She emphasized that they loved each other. She blamed stress. She blamed herself. She blamed the trip. Anything except him. Watching the footage years later, many viewers focused not only on what Gabby said but on how she said it. Her voice trembled. She laughed nervously between tears. She seemed deeply concerned about Brian's well-being, even while visibly struggling herself. Experts in coercive relationships later noted that victims frequently internalize responsibility for conflicts. Whether that dynamic applied in every aspect of Gabby's relationship cannot be determined solely from one recorded interaction. However, the footage undeniably captured a young woman in profound emotional distress. The officers tried to slow the situation down. They separated the couple. Each was interviewed independently. Both officers remained respectful, professional, patient. One officer even shared personal experiences from his own marriage, hoping to reassure Gabby that relationship stress can sometimes feel overwhelming. Their goal was not simply enforcement. It was de-escalation. For nearly an hour, they attempted to understand what had happened. The Utah heat remained relentless. Cars passed intermittently along the highway. Tourists continued driving toward scenic overlooks, completely unaware that history was quietly unfolding on the shoulder of the road. Gabby sat inside the patrol vehicle for much of the encounter. Occasionally she wiped fresh tears away. She tried to compose herself. She answered every question politely. She thanked the officers more than once. Even in obvious emotional pain, she seemed worried about inconveniencing everyone around her. That tendency reflected what friends had long described about her personality. She wanted harmony. She wanted people to feel comfortable, even if it meant suppressing her own emotions. Brian, by comparison, remained noticeably more confident throughout his interview. He explained their recent arguments as products of stress, long travel days, and living inside a small van. He acknowledged that tensions had increased. He spoke casually about hiking, travel plans, and ordinary relationship disagreements. From his perspective, nothing appeared beyond repair. The officers faced an incredibly difficult decision. Utah law required them to determine who qualified as the primary aggressor. Evidence suggested both individuals had engaged physically during the confrontation. Gabby's admission that she had struck Brian, combined with visible scratches, complicated the legal analysis. Ultimately, the officers concluded that separating the couple for the night represented the safest immediate solution. Brian would spend the evening at a local hotel arranged through a domestic violence resource program. Gabby would remain with the van. Neither would face criminal charges. The decision seemed reasonable based upon the information available to the officers at that moment. No one present knew what investigators would later uncover. No one knew Gabby had only weeks left to live. No one imagined that millions of people would eventually pause, rewind, and analyze every second of this interaction. When the roadside encounter finally ended, Gabby climbed back into the white van. Brian gathered a few personal belongings before leaving with another officer. For one night, they would sleep separately. Many observers later wondered whether that separation represented a missed opportunity. Could additional intervention have altered the course of events? Could more extensive questioning have uncovered hidden abuse? Could mandatory arrests or emergency protective measures have prevented what happened next? These questions have echoed ever since. The truth is painfully complicated. Hindsight provides information unavailable in real time. Investigators looking backward possess evidence officers on the roadside could never have known. Yet the footage sparked nationwide conversations about domestic violence response, victim behavior, coercive control, and the extraordinary difficulty of identifying dangerous relationships before violence reaches its worst conclusion. In the days following the traffic stop, Gabby and Brian reunited. The journey continued. Photographs appeared online. Mountain landscapes once again filled Instagram. To followers, everything looked normal. Perhaps even better than before. The roadside encounter remained unknown to the public. Hidden inside police evidence systems. Just another recorded domestic incident. But beneath the carefully chosen photographs, something had changed. The emotional fracture visible in Moab had not disappeared. It had merely returned to the privacy of the van. The endless highways continued leading north. Utah slowly gave way to Wyoming. Towering mountains replaced red desert cliffs. Crystal clear rivers cut through wide valleys. National parks welcomed thousands of late summer visitors seeking peace beneath enormous western skies. Among them traveled a young woman still carrying a camera, still chasing beautiful landscapes, still trying to hold together both a relationship and a dream that seemed to be slipping quietly through her fingers. No one passing their white van could have guessed that one of the final opportunities for outside intervention had already come and gone. The road stretched endlessly ahead. So did the silence between them. And somewhere beyond the breathtaking beauty of the Tetons, the final chapter of Gabby Petito's life was already beginning to unfold. The road from Utah into Wyoming carried them away from the red desert landscapes and toward a completely different world. The towering sandstone formations of Mope slowly disappeared behind them. The dry heat of the desert gave way to cooler mountain air. The landscape transformed into endless fields, dense forests, and enormous stretches of wilderness where human voices seemed to disappear beneath the sound of wind moving through the trees. For most travelers, entering Wyoming feels like arriving somewhere untouched. It is a place where the horizon seems impossibly far away. Where mountains rise suddenly from flat valleys. Where wildlife moves freely across open land. Where people come searching for solitude, adventure, and moments that feel disconnected from the rest of the world. For Gabby Petito, Wyoming represented exactly what she had been chasing since the beginning of the trip. Beauty. Adventure. A place worthy of photographs. A place where she could create memories. The Grand Teton region was one of the destinations she had been most excited about. The sharp peaks rising dramatically above Jackson Hole looked almost unreal. Snow-covered mountains reflected in blue lakes. Pine forests stretched for miles. Roads curved through landscapes that seemed designed specifically for travel videos. It was the kind of place Gabby would normally have loved. She captured it through her camera. She searched for the perfect angles. She documented trails, mountains, and quiet moments beneath the enormous western sky. To anyone following her online, everything still appeared magical. But behind those images, the reality was becoming increasingly difficult to understand. The trip that had started as a dream had become something much more complicated. The tension between Gabby and Brian had not disappeared after the Mobe incident. If anything, the emotional pressure appeared to follow them. The separation arranged by police had only lasted one night. Afterward, they continued traveling together. They returned to the same van. The same narrow living space. The same unresolved problems. For Gabby, the journey represented a dream she had invested emotionally and creatively into. Abandoning it would mean admitting something was wrong. It would mean questioning the future she had imagined with Brian. Many people who experience difficult relationships struggle with that exact conflict. They are not simply deciding whether to stay or leave. They are deciding whether to give up a version of the future they deeply believed in. For Gabby, that future included marriage, travel, creativity, and building a life around shared experiences. Walking away was not an easy choice. Especially when the outside world continued seeing a beautiful adventure. By late August, communication with family members began changing. Those closest to Gabby noticed details that seemed small at first. Shorter responses. Less frequent calls. A different tone in her voice. Parents often know their children in ways strangers cannot understand. They recognize pauses. They hear changes in energy. They notice when excitement sounds forced. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, had always been close with her daughter. They communicated regularly during the trip. Gabby shared updates, photographs, and stories about the places she visited. But as the days passed, something felt different. Not dramatically different. Not enough to immediately suggest danger. Just enough to create an uncomfortable feeling that something was wrong. The last confirmed sightings of Gabby occurred in the area surrounding Grand Teton National Park and Jackson, Wyoming. Visitors saw the white Ford Transit van. Other travelers noticed the couple. Some exchanged brief conversations. Some crossed paths without realizing the significance of the moment. The wilderness around them was filled with people searching for adventure. Nobody knew they were standing near the final chapter of a young woman's life. One of the most important pieces of evidence would come from a completely unexpected source. A couple traveling through Wyoming captured footage on their dashboard camera while driving near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area. At the time, the footage appeared meaningless. Another road. Another passing vehicle. Another moment from a vacation. The camera recorded the white van parked among trees near the remote camping area. The travelers continued driving. They did not know they had captured a vehicle connected to a future national investigation. That is one of the strange realities of criminal investigations. The most important evidence is often created by accident. A security camera recording a street. A receipt saved in a wallet. A photograph taken without knowing what it captured. A stranger pressing a record button at exactly the right moment. Meanwhile, Gabby's online presence continued creating the impression that everything was normal. Her followers saw photographs. They saw beautiful scenery. They saw a young woman exploring America. But behind the images, her family was becoming increasingly concerned. On August 27, one of the final known video calls between Gabby and her mother took place. During that conversation, Gabby was believed to be in the Grand Teton area. The details of that final communication would later become deeply significant. After that, contact became increasingly limited. Then came the message that raised even more questions. On August 30th, Gabby's mother received a text message from her daughter's phone. The message said, "No service in Yosemite." At first glance, it seemed like a normal explanation. Travelers often lose phone service in national parks. Anyone who has explored remote areas understands the frustration of seeing a phone suddenly display no signal. But something about the message felt wrong. Gabby was not supposed to be in Yosemite National Park. She was believed to be in Wyoming. The wording also felt unusual to her mother. It did not sound like Gabby's typical way of communicating. The message created uncertainty. Was Gabby simply struggling with poor reception? Had plans changed? Was she somewhere else? Or was someone else using her phone? At the time, nobody had enough information to answer those questions. But investigators would later examine every digital trace surrounding the case. Phone records. Location data. Bank transactions. Electronic communications. In modern investigations, devices often become silent witnesses. They remember locations. They preserve movements. They record moments people believe are private. Every tap. Every message. Every search. Every transaction can become part of a story someone never intended to tell. On September 1st, Brian returned to Florida. He drove the van back to the Laundrie family home in Northport. But Gabby was not with him. To anyone watching from the outside, this was the first undeniable sign that something was deeply wrong. A young woman had disappeared. Her fiancé had returned home alone. And he was not providing answers. The van that once represented adventure now sat quietly in the driveway. The same vehicle that had carried them across thousands of miles became a central piece of evidence. Inside were traces of the journey. Personal belongings. Travel equipment. Memories. Evidence. For Gabby's family, the situation became unbearable. They wanted information. They wanted reassurance. They wanted to know where their daughter was. But instead of explanations, they encountered silence. The silence became more disturbing than any answer could have been. Days passed. No phone call from Brian. No message explaining what happened. No indication that he was desperately searching for the woman he claimed to love. On September 11th, Gabby's family officially reported her missing. The investigation that followed would quickly transform from a missing person case into one of the most closely watched criminal investigations in American history. But before the world knew the full story, there was a period of confusion. A young woman was missing. Her fiancé was refusing to speak. And the last person known to have been with her was suddenly disappearing behind legal protection and silence. When police approached the laundry home, they were met with a situation that frustrated investigators and angered the public. Brian did not sit down for an interview. He did not explain the timeline. He did not describe the last moments he spent with Gabby. Instead, communication went through attorneys. The decision was legally protected. But emotionally, to millions watching the story unfold, it felt impossible to understand. People searching for a missing person expected urgency. They expected cooperation. They expected someone who cared about Gabby to be desperate for answers. Instead, they saw silence. And silence, especially in a case involving a missing young woman, can become its own kind of evidence. As news of Gabby's disappearance spread, the internet transformed. Her photographs were shared thousands of times. Strangers who had never met her learned her name. Travel communities began searching through old posts. True crime communities began reconstructing timelines. People analyzed every image, every caption, every video. The same social media platforms that once showed only the beautiful version of Gabby's life now became the center of a massive search for the truth. The world had watched her dream unfold. Now the world was searching for the missing pieces. Where was Gabby? What happened after Wyoming? Why did Brian return alone? Why was he silent? And what secrets remained hidden inside the final days of a journey that was supposed to represent freedom? The answers were waiting somewhere among the mountains, the messages, the photographs, and the quiet spaces between what Gabby showed the world and what she was experiencing away from the camera. The search had begun. And soon, the entire country would be looking toward Wyoming when Gabby Petito was officially reported missing on September 11, 2021. Her disappearance immediately felt different from many missing person cases. Perhaps it was because people already knew her face. Perhaps it was because thousands had followed her journey online before realizing they were watching the final weeks of her life. Or perhaps it was because the circumstances surrounding her disappearance created a haunting unanswered question. A young woman had traveled across the country with her fiancé. She had documented the adventure. She had shared photographs from breathtaking locations. And then, suddenly, she was gone. The person who had been with her the entire time had returned home without her. For investigators, the first hours after a missing person report are critical. Information disappears quickly. Memories fade. Digital evidence changes. Locations shift. Every minute matters. But in Gabby's case, investigators were facing a complicated situation. She was not missing from her hometown. She was missing hundreds of miles away, somewhere in the vast wilderness of Wyoming. Her last confirmed location was connected to an enormous landscape where mountains, forests, and open valleys could hide countless possibilities. The search area was massive. The clues were scattered. And the timeline was filled with unanswered questions. The first priority was determining the last moments when Gabby was known to be alive. Investigators began reconstructing every available piece of information. The white Ford Transit van. The travel route. The photographs posted online. The phone records. The messages. The financial transactions. The witnesses who crossed paths with the couple. Every detail became important. The journey that had once been shared as a beautiful adventure was now being examined as a timeline. A digital trail. A sequence of decisions. A collection of moments leading toward one terrible conclusion. One of the biggest questions investigators faced was simple. When did Gabby disappear? The answer required rebuilding the couple's movements during the final weeks of August. After leaving Utah, Gabby and Brian traveled toward Wyoming. The plan was to visit Grand Teton National Park and eventually continue north toward Yellowstone. The area was famous for its natural beauty. But it was also enormous. The wilderness surrounding Grand Teton contained miles of remote roads, dispersed camping areas, hiking trails, and isolated locations where someone could disappear without immediate discovery. Investigators needed a starting point. They needed evidence. They needed witnesses. And they needed the public's help. Within days, Gabby's case exploded across social media. Her photographs spread rapidly. The image of a smiling young woman surrounded by mountains appeared everywhere. People who had never heard her name before suddenly knew her story. The public began searching. Online communities created timelines. Travelers reviewed their own photographs and videos. People examined backgrounds in images, hoping to identify locations or hidden details. Some efforts became helpful. Others created confusion. Modern investigations often exist in a complicated relationship with the internet. Social media can bring attention to missing person cases faster than traditional methods ever could. A single post can reach millions within hours. A witness who might never contact police may recognize something after seeing a shared photograph. But the same speed can also spread rumors, false accusations, and theories without evidence. Investigators had to separate facts from speculation. The first major breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A couple named Jen and Carl Bethune were traveling through Wyoming during the same period as Gabby and Brian. Like many visitors to the area, they recorded their journey. Their dashboard camera captured ordinary moments from the road. Cars passing. Trees moving in the wind. The endless landscape surrounding them. At the time, they had no reason to believe the footage contained anything significant. But when investigators later reviewed the video, they discovered something important. In the distance, near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area, the camera had captured the white Ford Transit van associated with Gabby. It was a small detail. A vehicle among thousands. But it narrowed the search. It placed the van in a specific location during a critical period. The investigation now had a direction. Search teams moved toward the area. The landscape that had attracted Gabby because of its beauty became the center of an urgent search operation. Agents walked through fields. Teams examined terrain. Dogs searched areas where evidence might be located. Every piece of ground became significant. Every object became something investigators needed to evaluate. Meanwhile, attention turned toward Brian. From the beginning, investigators understood an uncomfortable reality. The last person known to have been with Gabby was also the person who had returned home without her. That did not automatically make him responsible. Investigations must follow evidence, not assumptions. But his actions after returning to Florida raised serious questions. Why had he not reported Gabby's disappearance? Why had he not contacted her family? Why had he returned home with the van while she remained missing? Why was he refusing to provide investigators with a timeline? Those questions intensified public interest. Many people watching the case struggled to understand why someone would not immediately cooperate when their fiancé was missing. For investigators, however, the situation was legally complicated. Brian had constitutional rights. He had the right to remain silent. He had the right to speak through an attorney. Police could not force someone to answer questions simply because the public demanded answers. The difference between public expectation and legal procedure became one of the defining tensions of the case. While investigators continued searching for Gabby, Brian's behavior became increasingly concerning to the public. Then, on September 13th, another shocking development occurred. Brian disappeared. According to his family, he told them he was going to the Carlton Reserve, a large nature area near their home in Florida. He left behind questions. And then he vanished. Suddenly, the investigation became a search for two people. Gabby, who had been missing for nearly 2 weeks. And Brian, the last person known to have been with her. Authorities now faced a completely different challenge. Finding someone in the wilderness is difficult. Finding someone who may not want to be found is even harder. The Carlton Reserve covered thousands of acres. It contained wetlands, forests, trails, and areas difficult to access. Search teams entered the region. Helicopters scanned from above. Ground teams moved through challenging terrain. But days passed without answers. The public reaction was intense. Many people believed Brian had information. Many believed his disappearance was connected to Gabis. Others waited for evidence. Investigators continued working quietly. Behind the scenes, agents were building the timeline. They examined phone activity. They reviewed surveillance footage. They analyzed financial records. They searched digital communications. Technology had become one of the most important witnesses in the investigation. A phone could reveal movements. A bank card could reveal decisions. A camera could preserve moments people thought no one would ever see. Every digital footprint became another piece of the story. The FBI eventually became heavily involved, recognizing that the case crossed state lines and required federal resources. The investigation expanded. Wyoming authorities. Florida law enforcement. Federal agents. Search and rescue teams. All working toward the same goal. Find Gabby. Find the truth. The emotional weight of the case continued growing. Across America, people followed updates constantly. Families imagined what Gabby's loved ones were experiencing. Young travelers questioned their own journeys. Victims of domestic violence saw parts of their own experiences reflected in the warning signs surrounding the case. The story had become larger than one investigation. It had become a national conversation. About relationships. About warning signs. About missing persons. About whose stories receive attention and whose disappearances remain unnoticed. But beneath the headlines and online discussions was one simple reality. A family was waiting for their daughter to come home. Every day without answers brought more pain. Every unanswered question created more fear. And in Wyoming, investigators continued searching through the wilderness, following a trail of evidence that would eventually lead them to the truth. The landscape that once represented Gabby's dream of freedom had become the place where her final moments were hidden. The search was closing in. But before investigators could understand what happened, they first had to find her. And somewhere among the vast fields near the Grand Tetons, the final evidence was waiting to be discovered. By the middle of September, the search for Gabby Petito had become impossible to ignore. News helicopters hovered above forests and mountain valleys. Television networks interrupted their regular programming to broadcast live updates. Across social media, millions refreshed their screens every few minutes, hoping for a breakthrough that would finally answer the question everyone had been asking. Where was Gabby? The search had grown far beyond a local missing person investigation. Federal agents worked alongside state and local law enforcement. Search and rescue teams crossed rough terrain with GPS equipment, drones, and specially trained dogs. Volunteers scanned roads, trails, and campsites, hoping that one overlooked detail might lead investigators to her. The vastness of Wyoming presented an enormous challenge. Grand Teton National Park and the surrounding public lands covered hundreds of square miles. Dense forests alternated with open meadows. Rivers carved through valleys surrounded by towering mountains. Countless dirt roads disappeared into isolated campsites where travelers could spend days without encountering another person. Nature was breathtaking. Nature was also unforgiving. If someone disappeared there, finding them could take days, weeks, or even months. But investigators now possessed something they had lacked during the first days of the search. A direction. The dashboard camera footage provided by Jen and Kyle Bethune had narrowed the focus to the Spread Creek dispersed camping area. The video showed the white Ford Transit van parked beside a dirt road on August 27. At first glance, nothing appeared unusual. The van stood quietly among the trees. Its rear door seemed partially open. No people were clearly visible. Just another camper enjoying one of Wyoming's many remote campsites. Yet investigators knew something that the tourists who recorded the footage could never have imagined. This might be the last place Gabby had ever been. Search teams moved methodically through the area. Every step required patience. The terrain could not simply be rushed. Investigators divided the landscape into sections. Agents examined disturbed vegetation. They documented footprints where possible. They photographed every potential piece of evidence before moving anything. The process was slow because it had to be. A single overlooked detail could alter the entire investigation. The weather remained calm, but the silence felt different. There were no crowds. No tourists gathering for photographs. Only investigators moving carefully through a landscape that had suddenly transformed from a beautiful campsite into a potential crime scene. Then, on September 19, 2021, the search came to an end. Federal agents located human remains in the Spread Creek area. The discovery was made only a short distance from where the van had been recorded. Even before formal identification, many investigators understood what they had found. Hope gave way to heartbreak. The following day, the remains were officially identified as those of 22-year-old Gabby Petito. The young woman whose photographs had inspired millions would never return home. Her family, who had spent days hoping for a miracle, now faced the unimaginable reality that the search had become a homicide investigation. The announcement spread across the country within minutes. Television anchors struggled to maintain composure. Social media filled with messages of grief. People who had never met Gabby mourned someone they felt they had come to know through photographs and videos. Her smile had become familiar. Her story had become personal. For investigators, however, grief could not interrupt the work. The crime scene demanded meticulous examination. Every inch of the surrounding area was documented. Forensic specialists photographed the location from multiple angles. Measurements were taken. Physical evidence was carefully collected and preserved. Nothing could be left to chance. The medical examiner later determined that Gabby's death was a homicide. The autopsy concluded that she had died from manual strangulation and had suffered blunt force injuries to the head and neck. The findings established not only that she had been killed, but that her death involved an intensely personal form of violence. Manual strangulation requires prolonged physical force. It is not an accidental act. It is not instantaneous. It is an act requiring sustained intent. That conclusion fundamentally changed the direction of the investigation. This was no longer a search for a missing traveler. It was now the investigation of a murder. Agents immediately intensified their efforts to establish the final timeline. Every hour of Gabby's last known days became critical. Digital evidence emerged as one of the investigation's strongest tools. Cellular records, GPS information, electronic transactions, location history. Together, they began reconstructing movements that neither photographs nor witness statements could fully explain. Investigators also examined financial activity connected to Gabby. Records showed that after her death, Brian had used Gabby's debit card and personal identification number to make unauthorized withdrawals and purchases while traveling back toward Florida. The transactions occurred after the period investigators believed Gabby had already died. Financial records cannot explain motive. They cannot describe emotion. But they establish movement. They establish decisions. They establish timelines. Each transaction became another fixed point in the investigation. Meanwhile, forensic analysts reviewed phone activity associated with both Gabby and Brian. Messages were compared. Locations were analyzed. The mysterious August 30th text message mentioning Yosemite drew particular attention. Investigators ultimately concluded there was evidence indicating Gabby's phone had been used after her death in an apparent effort to create the impression that she was still alive. The message that had troubled her mother from the beginning now carried an even darker significance. Technology had preserved what human memory could not. As investigators assembled these pieces, another disturbing reality became increasingly clear. Brian Laundrie remained missing. With Gabby's body now recovered, locating him became one of the FBI's highest priorities. He was officially named a person of interest before later becoming the subject of a federal arrest warrant related to unauthorized use of Gabby's financial card. Public attention intensified even further. Across the country, people asked the same questions. Where was Brian? Was he hiding? Had he fled the country? Was he still alive? Speculation spread rapidly online. Some theories suggested elaborate escape plans. Others imagined assistance from unknown accomplices. Investigators ignored the rumors. Evidence, not speculation, would determine the truth. The Carlton Reserve in Florida remained the primary focus of the search. The area presented enormous logistical challenges. Flooded trails. Dense vegetation. Swamps filled with alligators and snakes. Changing water levels that limited access. Search crews spent days moving through difficult terrain under exhausting conditions. Helicopters flew overhead. Boats entered flooded sections. Ground teams returned repeatedly despite finding little. The search became one of the largest in recent Florida history. At the same time, investigators continued interviewing witnesses connected to the Wyoming timeline. Campers recalled brief encounters. Restaurant employees described customers they barely remembered before the case. Travelers reviewed photographs hoping they had accidentally captured something useful. Most memories offered only fragments. A passing conversation. A familiar van. A brief sighting near a hiking trail. None alone solved the case. Together, they strengthened the timeline. As evidence accumulated, the image of Gabby presented on social media appeared increasingly tragic. The smiling young woman standing beside mountain lakes had been carrying burdens invisible to those watching online. The body camera footage from Mode was revisited repeatedly by professionals specializing in domestic violence. Advocates emphasized that victims frequently minimize abuse, blame themselves, and attempt to protect their partners. The footage became an educational tool as much as an investigative record. It forced difficult conversations. Could warning signs be recognized earlier? How should officers evaluate coercive control? How can communities better support individuals trapped in emotionally abusive relationships? Gabby's death transformed from an isolated tragedy into a catalyst for broader national reflection. For her family, however, the public discussions could never outweigh the personal loss. They were no longer searching for answers about where Gabby was. They were preparing for a funeral. The dreams she had carried across thousands of miles of open highway had ended in a quiet clearing beneath Wyoming skies. Yet one crucial chapter remained unfinished. The person investigators believed held the final answers had still not been found. Brian's disappearance left the investigation suspended between evidence and silence. The physical evidence increasingly revealed what had happened. But only one person could explain why. That explanation never came. Instead, the search in Florida continued day after day, as investigators moved through flooded wilderness hoping to locate a man who seemed to have vanished almost as completely as Gabby once had. The mountains of Wyoming had surrendered their secret. Now the swamps of Florida held another. As autumn settled across the United States, the investigation entered a strange and deeply frustrating phase. Gabby Petito had been found. The medical examiner had ruled her death a homicide. Investigators had reconstructed much of the couple's final journey across the American West. The evidence was steadily forming a coherent timeline. Yet the most important person in that timeline remained missing. Brian Laundrie had disappeared. For Gabby's family, there would be no opportunity to ask him where everything had gone wrong. For investigators, there would be no interview. No interrogation. No chance to confront him with the evidence that continued to grow stronger each day. Instead, another search was underway. This time, nearly 2,000 miles away from the mountains of Wyoming. The Carlton Reserve in Sarasota County, Florida, hardly resembled the dramatic landscapes that had defined Gabby's final journey. There were no snow-covered peaks. No breathtaking alpine lakes. Instead, there were flooded wetlands, dense vegetation, tangled brush, and miles of swamp where visibility disappeared after only a few feet. The reserve covered more than 24,000 acres. After weeks of heavy rain, much of the area remained underwater. Walking through it was exhausting. Searching it was even harder. Investigators faced an environment that constantly worked against them. Floodwaters concealed the ground. Mud swallowed footprints. Wildlife occupied the same terrain where officers searched. Alligators drifted through shallow water. Venomous snakes hid beneath fallen branches. Every movement required caution. Despite the difficulty, federal agents, state officers, local deputies, search and rescue teams, dive units, drones, helicopters, and specially trained dogs continued returning to the reserve day after day. The operation became one of the largest searches in recent Florida history. Television helicopters flew overhead almost continuously. News crews waited outside the Laundrie family home. Every development became breaking news. Every rumor generated new speculation. Millions of people watched the search unfold in real time. Social media produced countless theories. Some believed Brian had escaped overseas. Others suggested he had received help from friends. Some insisted he was hiding somewhere nearby while investigators searched in the wrong place. There were even reports of possible sightings in multiple states. Most proved false within hours. The attention surrounding the case had reached extraordinary levels. Almost every young man with a similar appearance risked being mistaken for Brian. Investigators, however, remained focused on evidence rather than speculation. The Carlton Reserve remained the most credible location. Brian's parents had informed authorities that he had left home on September 13, saying he intended to hike in the reserve. When he failed to return, they reported him missing. Initially, many members of the public viewed that explanation with skepticism. Some believed the family was protecting him. Others questioned why the report had not been made sooner. The scrutiny surrounding the Laundrie family became relentless. Their home was surrounded by reporters. Protesters gathered outside. People demanded answers. Legally, the family had the right to remain silent and communicate through their attorney. Emotionally, however, many Americans found the silence impossible to accept. Gabby's parents had pleaded publicly for information. They had begged for cooperation. Instead, they received almost nothing. The contrast between the two families became one of the defining emotional elements of the case. One family searched desperately for their daughter. The other remained largely silent under legal advice. As the weeks passed, investigators continued assembling evidence independent of Brian's whereabouts. Digital forensic specialists examined cell phone records. Financial investigators reviewed bank activity. Surveillance footage documented portions of Brian's journey back to Florida. The timeline became increasingly precise. The unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card after investigators believed she had already died led to federal charges related to access device fraud. Although those charges were not homicide charges, they provided a legal mechanism for pursuing Brian while the murder investigation continued. The evidence pointed in one direction. But without Brian, the investigation remained incomplete. October arrived. Rainfall in the Carlton Reserve gradually decreased. Water levels slowly receded. Areas that had been inaccessible for weeks began to emerge. Investigators returned once again. This time, Brian's parents joined the search in coordination with law enforcement. The atmosphere was noticeably different. Instead of searching flooded water, teams could now enter trails that had previously remained submerged. Only a short time after entering one section of the reserve, Brian's parents noticed items that appeared familiar. Personal belongings. Investigators were immediately notified. Agents secured the area. A more detailed search followed. Soon afterward, human skeletal remains were discovered nearby. The location was heavily wooded. Months of exposure to Florida's harsh environment had significantly affected the remains. Forensic specialists carefully documented everything before recovery began. Dental records were ultimately used to confirm the identity. The remains belonged to Brian Laundrie. The news spread rapidly. The nationwide manhunt was over. But instead of leading investigators to a living suspect, it had ended with another death. The medical examiner later determined that Brian had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Near the remains, investigators recovered several personal items. Among them was a backpack, a revolver, and a notebook. At first, the notebook appeared badly damaged. Months in the humid Florida environment had soaked many of its pages. Specialists worked carefully to preserve and examine its contents. Eventually, investigators were able to recover substantial portions of the writing. The notebook would become one of the final pieces of evidence in the case. Inside, Brian accepted responsibility for Gabby's death. The writings attempted to explain what had happened in Wyoming. According to Brian's account, Gabby had been injured near a creek, and he claimed that he ended her life believing he was acting to spare her suffering. Investigators found no evidence supporting that version of events. The autopsy findings were inconsistent with such a narrative. The medical evidence established death by manual strangulation. The notebook therefore did not alter the forensic conclusions. Instead, it served primarily as an admission that Brian had caused Gabby's death. For investigators, the discovery answered the central question of responsibility. It did not answer every question about motive. It did not explain every moment leading up to the homicide. But it confirmed what the physical evidence had already strongly suggested. The FBI continued reviewing all available evidence before issuing its final investigative summary. The agency concluded that Brian Laundrie had intentionally killed Gabby Petito and later died by suicide before he could be arrested or prosecuted. With the suspect deceased, there would be no criminal trial. No jury. No opening statements. No witnesses taking the stand. No cross-examinations. No guilty verdict announced in a courtroom. Legally, the investigation reached its conclusion. Emotionally, however, it never truly felt complete. Trials serve many purposes beyond determining guilt. They establish public records. They allow families to hear evidence presented openly. They provide opportunities for victims' loved ones to speak. They create a sense, however imperfect, of accountability. Gabby's family would never receive that experience. Instead, the case ended through forensic evidence, digital records, witness testimony, and a notebook recovered from a flooded Florida wilderness. The absence of a trial left many people with lingering questions. What exactly happened during those final hours near Spread Creek? What conversations took place inside the van? Was there a specific argument? Had Gabby considered leaving the relationship? What thoughts filled Brian's mind after her death as he drove thousands of miles back to Florida alone? Some questions can never be answered with certainty. The only two people present during Gabby's final moments were Gabby herself and Brian. One lost her life. The other took his own before facing justice in court. In the weeks that followed, investigators gradually closed active portions of the case. Evidence was catalogued. Reports were finalized. Digital records were archived. The massive search operations ended. News helicopters disappeared from the skies above both Wyoming and Florida. Eventually, television crews packed their equipment. The headlines grew less frequent. Public attention slowly shifted toward newer stories. But for the families involved, life would never return to what it had been before the summer of 2021. Gabby's journey had begun with hope, creativity, and dreams of discovering America's most beautiful places. It ended with one of the most widely followed homicide investigations of the digital age. The evidence had revealed the truth. The suspect had admitted responsibility in writing. Yet justice, in the traditional sense, would never take place. The courtroom remained empty. The verdict would never be read aloud. And the final chapter of the criminal investigation closed not with the sound of a judge's gavel, but with the quiet turning of pages inside a weathered notebook recovered from a flooded forest. When the investigation officially came to an end, many people assumed the story had ended with it. The headlines gradually disappeared. Television crews packed away their cameras. Breaking news banners stopped flashing across television screens. Social media, which had once seemed unable to speak about anything else, slowly moved on to newer stories. That is often how public attention works. A case dominates every conversation for weeks. Then another tragedy takes its place. But for the families left behind, there is no final broadcast. There is no closing theme. There is no moment when life quietly returns to normal. For Gabby Petito's family, the real journey was only beginning. Their daughter would never return home. Her room would remain exactly as she had left it until someone finally found the strength to sort through her belongings. Photographs that once celebrated happy memories now carried unimaginable weight. Every birthday became a reminder of the years that would never come. Every holiday included an empty chair. Every family gathering contained a silence that no one knew how to fill. Grief changes the meaning of ordinary things. A favorite song suddenly becomes difficult to hear. A familiar perfume lingers in memory long after the bottle is empty. A handwritten note becomes more valuable than anything money could ever buy. For Gabby's parents, every photograph taken during the road trip became both a treasured memory and a heartbreaking reminder of dreams interrupted. They looked at the same smiling face the rest of the world had seen. But unlike millions of strangers, they remembered the child behind every picture. The little girl who loved animals. The teenager discovering photography. The young woman who believed the world was full of beautiful places waiting to be explored. The internet knew Gabby through carefully edited images. Her family knew her laughter before the camera was ever switched on. They knew the sound of her voice when she was excited. They knew the expressions she made when she was nervous. They knew the dreams she had carried long before anyone followed her on social media. Those memories survived long after the headlines disappeared. As they struggled through unimaginable loss, Gabby's family made a decision that surprised many people. Instead of allowing the tragedy to define the final chapter of her life, they chose to build something in her memory. They established the Gabby Petito Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping families of missing persons while also raising awareness about domestic violence, coercive relationships, and the warning signs that are too often overlooked. The foundation reflected the person Gabby had always tried to be. Someone who wanted to help others. Someone who believed kindness mattered. Someone who saw beauty where others saw ordinary moments. Transforming grief into purpose is one of the hardest things a family can attempt. There is no replacing a daughter. No charitable organization can erase heartbreak. But purpose offers something grief alone cannot. It gives suffering a direction. The foundation soon began supporting educational efforts, community awareness, and organizations working with victims of domestic violence. Gabby's story became more than a true crime case. It became part of a broader conversation. Millions of people watched the police body camera footage recorded in Moab. For many viewers, it was simply another piece of evidence. For survivors of abusive relationships, it looked painfully familiar. The repeated apologies. The self-blame. The desperate attempts to calm everyone else. The fear of creating conflict. Domestic violence experts pointed out that abuse is not always visible through bruises or broken bones. Control can appear gradually. Isolation. Manipulation. Emotional dependency. Constant criticism. Financial control. Repeatedly convincing another person that every disagreement is somehow their fault. These forms of abuse often leave no visible injuries. Yet they can reshape someone's entire understanding of themselves. Gabby's case encouraged conversations about coercive control in ways that many previous cases had not. Police departments across the country reviewed body camera footage as part of training discussions. Advocates emphasized the importance of recognizing emotional distress even when physical evidence appears limited. Experts debated how officers should evaluate domestic disturbances involving mutual accusations and emotionally complex situations. No single policy could guarantee future tragedies would be prevented. But the discussion itself represented progress. The case also forced society to examine another uncomfortable reality. Social media had played two completely opposite roles throughout the investigation. At first, it helped create the illusion of a perfect relationship. Followers saw breathtaking landscapes, romantic adventures, smiling photographs, freedom. The carefully curated version of life that platforms naturally encourage. Then, after Gabby disappeared, those same platforms became powerful investigative tools. People shared missing person posters. Travelers searched through old photographs. Witnesses reviewed videos. The dashboard camera footage that helped narrow the search area reached investigators because ordinary people recognized its importance. The same internet that had admired Gabby's journey ultimately helped reconstruct her final days. It was a reminder that technology itself is neither good nor bad. Its impact depends entirely on how people choose to use it. For countless young couples following travel influencers online, Gabby's story also challenged unrealistic expectations. Life inside a photograph lasts less than a second. Real relationships exist during every moment the camera is turned off. Arguments. Silence. Exhaustion. Compromise. Fear. None of these realities appear easily beneath carefully filtered images. The case reminded millions that online perfection often hides private struggles. Perhaps one of the most profound effects of Gabby's story came from survivors who finally recognized themselves within it. Across the United States and beyond, domestic violence organizations reported hearing from people who said the case gave them the courage to seek help. Some recognized patterns of emotional control they had previously dismissed. Others realized how frequently they apologized for things that were never their fault. Many saw themselves reflected in Gabby's visible anxiety during the Moab traffic stop. Her story reached people who had quietly believed their experiences were normal. Sometimes awareness begins not with statistics, but with one face. One story. One life. Meanwhile, investigators quietly finalized the remaining administrative work. Evidence was catalogued. Reports were completed. Federal findings confirmed that Brian Laundrie had been responsible for Gabby's death before dying by suicide in Florida. Legally, the investigation closed. No additional suspects existed. No further criminal proceedings remained possible. Yet true closure is something the legal system cannot provide. A completed case file does not erase trauma. An official report does not restore birthdays, conversations, or future memories that will never exist. Justice and healing are not always the same thing. For Gabby's family, healing became something they pursued day by day rather than something they expected to achieve all at once. There were interviews, public appearances, advocacy work. Moments when speaking about Gabby undoubtedly reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. Yet they continued because they hoped another family might avoid the pain they had endured. That hope became part of Gabby's legacy. Not simply the young woman whose disappearance captivated the world. Not simply another victim remembered through documentaries and news specials. But someone whose story encouraged difficult conversations capable of saving lives. Years after the investigation ended, visitors continued stopping near the locations connected to her journey. Some left flowers. Others left handwritten notes. Many simply stood quietly, looking across the same mountains and forests that Gabby had once admired through her camera lens. Nature remained unchanged. The rivers continued flowing. The pine trees continued swaying beneath Wyoming winds. Sunrises still painted the Tetons with golden light. The landscape that witnessed unimaginable tragedy also continued displaying extraordinary beauty. There is something deeply symbolic about that contrast. Life moves forward. The world keeps turning. Yet certain places quietly remember. For millions who followed the case, Gabby's story became impossible to forget because it challenged assumptions people rarely question. That youth guarantees safety. That love always protects. That beautiful photographs reveal happy lives. That warning signs are always obvious. They are not. Sometimes the most dangerous stories begin with the brightest smiles. Sometimes the loudest cries for help are hidden beneath repeated apologies. Sometimes the places that appear most peaceful become scenes of unimaginable loss. Gabby Petito's journey across America began with a search for freedom. In the end, her story left behind something far more enduring than photographs or travel videos. It left questions, lessons, warnings, and a reminder that behind every image shared with the world exists a human life far more complicated than any camera can ever truly capture.